Are you thinking about making a move to Conroe, Texas? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you the good, the bad, the ugly, everything you need to know about living up in Conroe, Texas. Hi, my name is Aaron, and every week I'm helping buyers relocate to and throughout the greater city of Houston and the surrounding suburbs. So if you need to know anything about where to eat, sleep, live, play, hit me up morning or night. I'm your guy. I'll drop my info on the screen right now. It doesn't matter if you're a day, a month, a week, a year, 2 years, 3 years out. Hit me up. I would love to be a resource to you. And so today we're talking all about Conroe, Texas. It's a suburb just north of, well, not just north, it's a lot north of downtown Houston. And so to get a scale of where everything is and talk about everything we have to talk about today, let's hop on over to the map to get started. So if you're not familiar with where Conroe is just north of the Woodlands. I think it's like 5 or 10 miles north of the Woodlands. However, there are some pockets that are just east of the Woodlands that kind of go over into this one of the areas that we've already previewed on this channel, that Porter New Caney kind of area. And so there are some opportunities that are under or south of 242, but most of the communities here are going to be north of 242 that I'm hovering around right now. And you can see that Conroe kind of goes and stretches all the way up to and around Lake Conroe, right? So you have some parts that are going to be super far away from downtown Houston, but you have some that are going to be sneakily kind of close to some of the other suburbs that kind of hover around the greater city of Houston. So in that Spring area, in that Porter area, New Caney area, you just got a couple that kind of stretch out around some of those distances that kind of get to that 30 to 40 mile range from downtown Houston. But the center of actual Conroe, as Google Maps calls it, it's about 50 miles from downtown Houston. So stepping over to Google Maps, just taking a look at it to show you kind of what we were talking about a few seconds ago. You got a 41 mile straight shot if you're just going to take 45 all the way down from the center of Conroe down to downtown Houston. So depending on the route that you take, you're going to be somewhere between 41 and 50 miles from downtown Conroe all the way down to downtown Houston. Kind of like I was mentioning earlier, if you have a house that is in this area, or stretching all the way over to this kind of like Porter side, you're going to have some houses that are a little bit closer. So you'll be in that like 30 to 40 mile range as opposed to the 40 to 50 mile range if you're closer to downtown Conroe or north of 242. So you'll have a little bit shorter commute if you are in this portion of Conroe versus up there all the way up on the north side of Conroe, closer to Lake Conroe. And one of the reasons that I love the Conroe area is because it gets really, really green. Like as you get closer and closer to that greater like Woodlands Conroe area, you really just start to see those big mature trees just kind of surround you. And as you're kind of driving through the highways, the big trees just kind of surround the interstate system. And so it's just really a gorgeous place to be. There's a ton of communities out there that are popping up that are brand new, as well as some existing communities that give you a large variety of different things and different lifestyles that you can live out there. It just is really one of the prettier places. And one of the things that really catches my eye whenever I go somewhere is the ability to see trees. A lot of my clients are so pro new construction, and I am Mr. New Construction, that sometimes it's easy to forget kind of what trees look like in a new construction community, because most of them are just completely knocked down. And you can see the age of a community by how big the trees are. And so it's often a treat to go to a community and see these nice, lush, mature trees just kind of surrounding homes. And Conroe has plenty of places that give you that. And so from a lifestyle standpoint, you can have these houses that are in the middle of a bunch of acreage, or you can have the variety of being lake life, or you can have a tight-knit planned community tied to your own schools and your own infrastructure. You just have so much variety when it comes to living in the greater Conroe area, that you can have the best of all worlds depending on what you personally want to see when you call yourself going home. And so in Conroe, you can have this. This can be your backyard, right? This can be what you wake up to every day. Or you can say, hey, I don't want to see a neighbor for acres around me. And you can have something like this where you have a house that is in the middle of basically a forest, right? You can have that style of lifestyle as well in Conroe. Or you can have a planned community that has all of the amenities that you'll ever need on site in a community like Artavia in Conroe. Now on to amenities. I used to think that Conroe was just this country place that there was going to be nothing out there, but the more and more that I went out there to tour and to travel, you can just really see the development that is coming up out there in Conroe, especially around that 242 area. There's a lot of communities that are popping up, a lot of commercial space out there, a lot of infrastructure. So you're going to have your HEB, you're going to have your Targets, you're going to have your Krogers, Costco's, all your grocery stores, all your shopping. You're going to have your Starbucks as well as your McDonald's and all the things that you need to kind of just be in the community, to not feel like you need to come all the way down to the city of Houston to get the things that you need. You're going to have all of that stuff in the greater Conroe area, as well as if you need to do some shopping or you want to go and have some outings in the Woodlands, because you are where you are. You're just a few miles away from the Woodlands where you can use their infrastructure as well. And so hopping back over to the map, you can just kind of see that you have a lot of stuff around you. You're going to have your grocery stores, you're going to have your Walmarts, HEBs, you're going to have your things to eat. And like, for example, in this town center, you're going to have your Chick-fil-A, your Home Depot, Panda Express, all the stuff that you would basically need in a community. You have that as you get up to the greater Conroe area. You're also going to have a lot of parks and some golf and things around you as well. And as you kind of get closer and closer to the Woodlands, you're definitely going to be able to piggyback off of the amenities that they have in the Woodlands as well. And hopping over to the 242, some of the areas that I was talking about earlier, as far as being recently developed and starting to get some new communities kind of popping out that way. You can see Mavera is coming up on its way. If you ride this down a little bit more, you get some Loveland Ranch, and then you'll also eventually run into Artavia out here as well. So there's definitely some great communities that are out in this area. And so a particular area that is really showing a lot of growth is along this 242. And so up and through here, you're going to have your grocery stores, your HEB, you're going to have your Starbucks. There's a Chick-fil-A that there's just coming. I think they said it's going to be opening actually like today out there. You had your McDonald's, all the food and stuff that you're going to need along this 242. And then they also have a bunch of communities that have popped up out here. So Mavera is opening up, and over here just outside of the Conroe Porter Road, you're going to have Artavia is basically this, and I think it's like 3,000 acres of development over here in the trees. Super gorgeous, super pretty. If you go a little bit further down, you're going to have some more communities along 242 as well. So when you're moving to a place like Conroe, Texas, you want to also feel like you have the amenities and the infrastructure to do all the things that you need to do without needing to make that 40 or 50 mile commute to the city, right? And Conroe has so much for you to do out in the area. Especially one of the big draws to the area is Lake Conroe. But outside of that, there's a ton that you can do as far as parks and golf and all the recreational things, not even including the fact that you're super close to the Woodlands and have all of the things that you can do and enjoy out there as well. So if this is your first time here to my channel, you don't know that I love myself a free park. Me and my wife take our kid to the park all the time. It's just one of the things that we love and enjoy doing. And Conroe is full of parks and petting zoos and all kind of stuff that you could ever really want. They got Lion Park, that's pretty nice. I haven't gone to Wiggins Village Park, but I've heard that it is pretty nice as well. The Robertson Park is pretty nice. And so there's a ton of stuff that you can do out in the greater Conroe area, and that isn't even touching on this big monstrous thing over here that is Lake Conroe, that you can do all of your basic water sports and things that you need to do. There's a couple home sites surrounding this on this side of the Conroe area, but there's just a lot that you can really do in the Conroe area when it comes, especially if you want that lake life, that outdoor life, there's a lot that you can do in the Conroe area. They have some museums not too far from where you are in Conroe. They're heading more towards that Spring and Woodlands area, but you definitely have some things that you can go and check out when you're out in Conroe. Tons of restaurants, tons of fast food, tons of gas stations, all the stuff that you need, grocery stores, all of that stuff. You also have your own movie theaters out here. You're gonna have your Star Cinema Grill. You're gonna have your Grand Theater out in Conroe, and then as you kind of go down 45, you're gonna have some more options, either kind of hugging that 242 side or hugging over into the Woodlands. So attractions and things that you can do, you have tons that you can do out in the greater Conroe area. So this is a great location if, and this is a huge if, and that is, in my opinion, this is a great location if you don't need to be much further south than Spring, just because that commute in and out of Conroe down to like downtown Houston, if you basically have to cross over the Beltway, you are going to have and feel like that is a long drive. If you have to go much further than Spring, I think you're going to really hate that commute. I had a ton of, in my former life when I was a project manager, I had a ton of superintendents and assistant project managers that I worked with that would also say that they have to make that commute from Conroe to get basically to the center of the city in the mid center where a lot of our projects were. And they would just talk about how it would take them like an hour and a half to 2 hours to get from where we are out there to the country. And that's just because most of that is road. Like even if you had a straight shot and you were able to go as fast as you wanted to go, if you still had to drive 50 miles to get to your house, that's going to be at least close to an hour just for a commute, no traffic. And I have never seen a day in the greater Houston area where there isn't any traffic, right? So if you know that you're going to have a lifestyle that's going to bring you in and out of the city more frequently, then I would say that this is probably not the best location for you, just because that's a lot of road between Conroe and downtown Houston. But this location is great for people that want to have like that quiet, kind of secluded lifestyle, depending on what style of home that you're more interested in, if whether that's on a lake, or you want a little bit more acreage in an older community, or if you want to be in a planned community like Hartavia where you are surrounded by the trees and you're living and you have the amenities on site. Depending on the lifestyle that you want to live, I think all of those can offer a lifestyle that is great for families. And one of the biggest portions of that, of raising a family, is the educational system. And out there in Conroe, you're going to be tied to Conroe ISD. So jumping on over to niche.com, I'll leave a link in the description so you can check it out yourself. But this is rated the #1 best school district in Montgomery County. And that's basically that location north of Houston that we were showing on the map earlier. Here are some of the ratings for the school district, the Conroe ISD. And you have A for academics, A for diversity. We'll break down some of these stats a little bit more in depth as we go down here. But this is a rated overall a pretty solid school district. So if you have some kiddos that are going to be in these schools tied to the Conroe ISD system, you should feel pretty good that they're going to get a great education for free. And as we do a little bit more of an in-depth scroll, looking at some of these on the maps, as you get kind of closer and closer to that Woodlands area, you'll start to see that the ratings are getting a little bit better. And as you get kind of further and further away into some of these a little bit older, a little bit more rural parts of Conroe, the schools are not as highly rated, but still some solid schools overall. You're not seeing any D's and F's or anything like that like you would see in some of the parts of the city of Houston and Houston ISD. Not too bad on the ratios. In some more sought after school districts, you'll see some around the 13 or 14 to 1, just showing a little bit more attention to your kiddo on an individual level. And it's rated as an A for diversity, but let's hop in there because sometimes that can be a little bit misleading. And so looking at the stats, this is the breakdown of the diversity. So for me, I know that there are definitely some school districts that are a little bit more diverse for the percentage breakdown of what I would like. For example, Humble ISD, all of these are a little bit more leveled out. So I would say that a place like Humble would be a little bit more diverse than this, but it still shows a pretty decent breakout for all of the demographics of the area in the school system. The next elephant in the room, did Conroe flood? Let's check out the flood maps and see some of the tools and things that we have on our side to make sure that you're going to be buying a house that you're comfortable in, and let's see if Conroe has an elevated risk of flooding. So a lot of Conroe is in an elevated flood risk, right? But if we're looking at things from a standpoint of Harvey, damn near everywhere in this area had issues with Harvey, right? That was just you hope a once in a lifetime flood where, you know, we get that amount of rain for that long, and it's like that storm just kind of sat over the greater Houston metro and just sat here for like a week, right? And so in any place, no matter how safe you were, if we get that amount of rain pretty much anywhere, you're going to have some kind of flood issues. But during Harvey, Conroe did have some areas that did get flooded out pretty bad. And one of the biggest reasons for that is its proximity to Lake Conroe. And so because you kind of are where you are, you're going to have a lot of offshoots. They also have a lot of little streams and little creeks and things that kind of help Lake Conroe not be as elevated as it is. However, just because you are where you are, you're basically going to be right around Lake Conroe at all times. And as you see, kind of like all these branches are pretty much connected to Lake Conroe in some fashion. So if you remember kind of some of the areas that we were looking at a little bit earlier on the map, you can see that basically anywhere that you live, you're probably going to be at some level of elevation risk when it comes to living in the greater Conroe area. Now it's going to be a case-by-case scenario. For example, this house that I picked for reference is like just outside of the major flood zone, but it is in a flood zone. And so are you going to be required to have flood insurance? You will likely have some level of requirement for flood insurance. But the next step that we would take for a house like this one that is in this zone is seeing if it did in fact flood. And how you do that here in the greater Houston area is to check out the seller's disclosure. And looking at this seller disclosure a little bit more in depth, this community did in fact flood. And they're telling you right here that yes, we flooded, and it was due to a breach of the reservoir, right? And so they're also telling you that you are in a floodplain, right? So these are the steps that we would have to take on a house by house basis, just to make sure that you're buying something that you're comfortable with and that you understand all the risk of moving up into that area. Now, one of the benefits of buying something that is brand new is if Harvey did a certain amount of damage to a community as far as flooding, that community needed to be built up above that level in order to be sold to the general public. So all of these new communities like Artavia or Marvera that are out there in that area, you're going to be at a higher elevation than the damage that Harvey did in order for that community to sell to the general public. So if you're going brand new, you're definitely going to be at a safer risk than you would if you were going at or looking at a resale or an older home. And if we are looking at older homes, our first lines of defense are going to be the flood map like I just showed you, and looking at this seller disclosure to see if you are in fact buying a home that has flooded or if you're at an elevated risk of flood. We're going to make sure that you feel comfortable before you decide to make that purchase. And the last thing that I would like to talk about are the taxes for Conroe, Texas. The taxes are pretty much following the same trend that most of these communities are out here, and that is that when you get out to a more established community that has been there for 10 plus years, the tax rates are a little bit lower. And when you get over to brand new communities where you're going to need all of those utilities, gas, sewer, waste, all of that stuff out to those communities, you're going to see that you're probably going to have a higher mud tax, and you're going to pay a tax rate somewhere around 3 to 3.5%. So with an entry price point of about $400,000 and a tax rate above 3, you're probably going to pay somewhere around the lines of $1,000 a month just for taxes before principal, interest, and insurance. So hopping on over into HAR to show you kind of what I mean. This is an older community. This was built in the late 60s, early 70s. And so hopping on down, I wouldn't be shocked if their tax rate isn't like under 2, just because they're super old and kind of out in the boonies. And their tax rate is 1.8, right? And so that's what you can kind of expect in some of these older communities as you buy something that is maybe a little less deed restricted, kind of more out in the rural parts of Conroe. That's not uncommon for that area. But if you hop on over to something that is a little bit more new construction, I'm expecting you to see anything less than like a 3, right? So we're seeing 3.26. That's before homestead exemption. If you're not sure what homestead exemption is, that's a little bit of a credit that you get for living and making something your primary residence here in the greater Texas area. So at the end of the day, you'll probably get a little bit of a deduct to get you under the threes, which is better than you would in most of the suburbs surrounding the greater Houston area. But you're still going to start out before that homestead exemption takes into effect. You're still going to be paying about $1,000 a month for taxes. So what do you think? Do you think that Conroe, Texas could be for you? If so, I would love to hear from you. I'll drop my number on the screen right now. If you're not sold on Conroe and want to check out some other suburbs around you in the greater Houston metro, I'll drop those videos on the screen right now. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have an amazing day.